Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video. Today we are covering an unsolved mystery of sorts. It's a murder, or maybe not a murder, but trust me when I say it is a case that has baffled pretty much everyone that's ever looked into it. So I think you guys are going to enjoy this one a lot. But yeah, let's hop right into it. Like and subscribe if you enjoy the video, and let's go. So, it's March 22nd, 1977, and Charles C. Morgan, a 29-year-old escrow agent, has gone missing in Tucson, Arizona. Nobody's really sure what happened. The guy has just vanished off the face of the earth. A lot of people theorize that he got abducted right after dropping his daughters off at school one morning, but they're not really sure exactly when he was taken. So 3 days later, Charles burst into his house at 2 a.m. out of nowhere. His wife, Ruth Morgan, kind of comes to him and she's like, "Honey, what's wrong? Where were you? What's going on?" It's been 3 days. The guy's been missing. When he burst into the house, his hands were zip tied and he had a plastic handcuff around one of his ankles that had the other half of it kind of dangling off. Charles is motioning to his mouth. He's trying to imply, I guess, that he can't speak. He's pointing to his mouth, pointing to his throat, and his wife is like, "What's going on? What's going on?" And she's like, "Can you write? Can you write?" So his wife rushes over a pen and paper for him, and he starts writing down that he has a psychoactive drug painted onto his throat, and that if he speaks, it will activate and it'll cause him like irreparable mental damage, or it will kill him. So basically it'll make him crazy forever, or it'll kill him. He also asked his wife to move his car for him because he was afraid they would find him, whoever that is. For the next few days, as she nursed him back to health, she fed him through like a feeding tube. As he kind of got back to health and started talking again, she said that he started kind of implying that he was working as a secret agent for the Treasury Department, which there's a lot of mixed reports about that, but basically a lot of people think that he was working for the Secret Service, which is technically a part of the Treasury Department. Here's a little video kind of describing some of that.
You may find it odd that the Treasury Department would have secret agents. Let's go into a brief explanation. On July 5th, 1865, the U.S. Secret Service was formed to catch counterfeiters. In 1867, the mission of the Secret Service broadened to, quote, detecting persons perpetrating frauds against the government, end quote. It was part of the Department of Treasury until 2003 and is now part of the Department of Homeland Security.
But yeah, essentially, Charles is kind of telling his wife that he's involved in some stuff that he might not have told her about beforehand. And she begins to get worried. He says these people are after him. At some point, he mentions that he lost his Treasury ID. And he's asking his wife, "Where's my Treasury ID? Where's my Treasury ID?" And she's saying, "I don't know. I haven't seen it anywhere. I didn't even know you had one." I mean, for all she knew, he was an escrow agent. So why would he need a Treasury ID?
He wrote, "They took my Treasury identification." And that's the first I'd heard of it.
What Treasury ID?
He wouldn't talk to me about it. He wrote. He had been working for them for about 2 or 3 years. And that was it.
So after he was abducted, he started wearing a bulletproof vest everywhere he went, all the time. And he was paranoid that somebody was going to come and take him. He wouldn't let anybody else take his daughters to school. He had to be the one to do it. He also grew a beard so that nobody could tell his identity. However, on June 7th, 2 months after the initial appearance, I mean, I should say this beforehand. It seems weird to me because wouldn't they know where he lives? So if he's driving his kids to school, he's only putting his daughters in more danger. So that part never really made sense to me, why he was so insistent about being the one to drive his kid to school. You know, as far as I know, he didn't get a new car. So he's living in the same house, he's driving the same car. How could these people, if they're that high up, have not been able to find him? It just doesn't really make sense. Growing a beard isn't going to stop them from finding you, in my opinion. And I guess it didn't, because 3 months later, on June 7th, he was taken again. He told his dad before this that if he was ever taken, that there was a letter somewhere that would tell his dad who had taken him, basically, and who was responsible for everything that had been going on. I guess he was trying to keep it a secret, but the dad was never able to find this letter anywhere, as far as we know. That being said, 9 days later, Chuck's wife got a phone call from someone called Green Eyes. And they basically told her not to worry, Chuck was fine. And then they said Ecclesiastes 12, 1 through 8. So I'll read that verse for you. I mean, trust me when I tell you, it's not really going to give you any answers. So it says, men are afraid of a high place and of terrors on the road. Remember him before the silver cord is broken and the golden bowl is crushed. Then the dust will return to the earth as it was, and the spirit will return to God who gave it. Now this verse, Ecclesiastes 12, 1 through 8, is going to kind of come into play later on as well. So remember that, that verse title, okay? Because it'll come back. So 2 days after Ruth has gotten this phone call from Green Eyes, and a total of 11 days since Chuck has gone missing, he's found dead 40 miles of Tucson. He was wearing his bulletproof vest, and his body was found in the desert 30 feet off the highway in the San Juan Springs area. So this is where it really starts to get crazy, so bear with me here. He had been shot once in the back of his head with his own .357 Magnum, okay? Now, there was gun residue on his left hand, right? As though he had fired the gun. So that's kind of the implication here, because a lot of people thought it might have been a suicide. Now, it's important to note, he was right-handed, and he was shot in the back of the head. So why would he use his not good hand, shoot himself in the back of the head like this? It doesn't really make a lot of sense. And on top of that, the gun had no fingerprints on it whatsoever. None of Chuck's, none of anybody else's. So a lot of people are kind of suspicious about what might have happened with this and whether this scene might have been staged. Now from here, it's only going to get weirder. Now, let's be honest. Nobody's going to shoot themselves and then, when they're dead, come back and be like, oh, let me wipe the prints off the gun so nobody knows it was me. It's not going to happen. Nobody's going to do that, especially after shooting themselves in the back of the head. It's not going to happen. So from here, it only gets weirder and weirder and weirder. Those weird things include the fact that Chuck was wearing a belt that had a makeshift knife included in the belt, so he could basically pull it out of the belt. He had a gun holster on his waist, and there was a pair of sunglasses found in his car that was not his. There was also a bunch of ammunition and weapons found throughout the car as well, which we're not really sure what the deal is with those. They found a CB radio. They found that the car had been modified so that it could somehow be opened or unlocked from under the front fender. There was also directions to the crime scene written in his handwriting in the car. And then, gets even weirder, a piece of one of his teeth was found wrapped in a white handkerchief in the back seat. Now, if you thought that was weird, get ready for more. Because Chuck had also clipped a $2 bill to the inside of his underwear. And written on the bill were 7 Spanish surnames from the letters A to G. Also, Ecclesiastes 12 was written on the bill, and then the numbers 1 through 8, or 1 and 8, were pointed to on the bill. Now, remember, this is the same exact verse that Green Eyes, the mysterious woman that had called Ruth, had told Ruth to look up when she said that Chuck was okay. And this was 2 days before. So somehow this woman and Chuck must have spoken or known each other. This verse must have been of some importance to them. We're not sure why. Now on the back of the bill, the signers of the Declaration of Independence were written and numbered 1 through 7 on the back of the bill for some reason. And then there was a map of this area near Tucson that was kind of, and all the locations on this mini map written on the $2 bill were known to be smuggling places in this area. They were known for smuggling. Now this will also come into play later on in the story, given what we think Charles might have been involved in. Now 2 days after Chuck's death, another woman, presumed to be the same one that had called Ruth, calls the police, and she claims that Chuck was supposed to meet her at the motel when he died, and that they had been hanging out at this motel together for the last few weeks before he died, essentially. So maybe he didn't go missing, maybe he was running for his life. We're not really sure, but this woman swears that he had been with her at this motel at least at some point. She was expecting him back, and he never came back. She swore in this phone call that her nickname was Green Eyes and that she had been the same woman that had called Ruth. And I guess maybe Chuck wanted his wife to know he was okay and had her call Ruth for some reason, but it doesn't make sense why Ruth told her the Bible verse, and what does that have to do with anything? It's all just kind of a mystery at this point. We're not sure. She also claimed in the phone call that before Chuck had left, before the last time she had seen him, Chuck had showed her a giant briefcase filled with cash, tons of money that he had been carrying around with him.
Green Eyes said that in the motel, Chuck showed her a briefcase containing thousands of dollars in cash. He told her that the money would buy him out of a contract that the mob had put on his life.
$60,000.
Now, despite all this weird stuff, somehow, like in some of the other cases we had, the police ruled this as a suicide simply because he had the gun residue on his hand. Maybe they know something they're not telling us, but if they do, if they ruled it as a suicide, why not just tell us all the information they have? It doesn't make any sense if it's not being investigated anymore. But regardless, they ruled this one as a suicide as well. Unfortunately, I just realized that my air conditioning has been on this whole time, so I apologize for the fan noise in the background if that's loud at all. I just wanted to say that. Anyways, so it gets even weirder from here. So shortly after he died, his car was impounded by the police, and while under police care, it was broken into. We're not sure what was taken or what happened, but maybe people were trying to erase evidence or something. Also around this time, his office was ransacked, broken into and completely ransacked by someone. And a little while after this, his wife said that some FBI agents, or two people claiming to be FBI agents, showed up at her door and said they needed to look around the place because they needed some papers or something. And she said she let them in, assuming they were FBI agents, and that they completely tore the place apart looking for something. She's not sure if they found what they were looking for or not, but they left, and that was that. She's not even sure if they really were FBI agents. There was no way for her to know, but they flashed some badges at her, and that was it. This is interesting because when Don Devereaux, who is one of like the main investigative journalists for Unsolved Mysteries, the TV show series that ran years ago, and they just started it back on Netflix now, he was one of the head investigative journalists for this. And when he contacted the FBI asking them about this, they claimed that they had never heard of Charles C. Morgan. I mean, how convenient. So either those people were lying or the FBI is lying. Either way, something's up. So as I said earlier, a lot of people think that Chuck was involved with some shady stuff with the Treasury Department or with something in general, just some weird stuff behind the scenes that he was doing that he probably shouldn't have. So maybe with all these shady deals he was making and stuff that he was doing, maybe he just flew too close to the sun and upset somebody that, you know, he shouldn't have upset. Apparently he, you know, when Don Devereaux investigated all this, he said another thing that he found was that a lot of Charles's deals that he had made, he had kept records of these deals. And he had kept them secret just in case he needed to basically blackmail himself out of something in the future. So a lot of people think Charles might have had some records on people that, you know, might put their careers at risk or, you know, put them in danger. And so they went after him so they could stop that from happening. Or maybe they just didn't trust him, or maybe he did. Maybe he just couldn't pay back some debt that he had. We're not really sure. His daughter, Megan Heidi, this is wild. She said that my father had a lot of information about people here in Tucson that could have been very detrimental. There was a lot of information about politicians, people who are still alive that work for our government. He had that information and they wanted to silence him. So before his death, he testified in a secret state investigation on illegal activity on both sides of the Arizona and Mexico border. He was also a reluctant witness for the Arizona Attorney General's office in the questioning of a now closed Tucson bank. So, you know, he was clearly, you know, you don't close a bank without pissing off some people. So there were more than enough people that he pissed off that might have had a motive to do something to him. Not to mention if he's working with these shady organizations behind the scenes. You know, a lot of times when this happens, the CIA, people in the CIA, you know, are helping keep it quiet so that they can get some money from it. And that's kind of what Don Devereaux's theory was. And a lot of this is that people in the CIA were involved. And he thinks this because people told him that that was the case. CIA agents themselves came to him and told him this. So while Chuck told his wife that he was fighting against organized crime, a lot of people think he might have been working with some of these people to help them launder money or make deals behind the scenes. We're not really sure exactly what it was, but there was definitely some shady stuff going on. Tucson at this time was known for smuggling, and for, you know, there was some laws in place that made it a lot easier for people to buy land there anonymously, which made it a lot easier for them to launder money. Another theory is that maybe he was working for a mafia family and they put a hit out on him, and maybe somebody who liked him in that family told him what was going to happen, maybe gave him a warning that a hit out had been put out for him, and so he gathered all this cash and whatnot, and that was what he had showed Green Eyes. And he brought it to the hitman, made a deal with them, and they met in this desert location. And maybe the hitman killed Charles, took the money, and left. You know, this theory isn't confirmed. This is just one of the popular theories with this case. But that one seems like one of the more plausible ones to me when you think about it. But that doesn't explain the Ecclesiastes 1-8 and all these other weird things, unless they were secret codes that they were using to communicate something or something secret about who they are. We're not really sure. So just when you think it couldn't get any crazier, in February 7th of 1990, Unsolved Mysteries aired this episode that they had, with all the research that they had done into this case. You know, they basically told the world all about it. And right around this time, weird stuff starts to happen.
Perhaps lending credence to the idea that Morgan was silenced. A similar crime occurred around the airing of the Unsolved Mysteries episode that exposed most of Morgan's criminal activity. On May 14th, 1990, at 11 p.m., Phoenix, Arizona resident Doug Johnston left for his night shift at a computer graphics company. He was found dead an hour later in his company's parking lot, slumped in the front seat of his car, having been shot once behind the left ear.
He too was right-handed, and there was no gun found at the scene anywhere. And this is where it gets even stranger. Not only did the police claim it was a suicide, they ruled it as a suicide, he lived, or his work where he was shot was right in front of either where Don Devereaux's office was or where Don Devereaux lived. It was right there. Don Devereaux is the guy who did all this journalism and research, who did all this research into this case for the episode. And the episode had just recently aired, and then this guy shows up dead right in front of his place. And not only did the guy kind of look like Don Devereaux, but also the car was almost identical to the one Don Devereaux drove. So a lot of people think that this was actually a hit put out on Don Devereaux, who was asking a lot of questions about this case at the time.
Around this time, Devereaux had a conversation with another journalist who had received a warning from the CIA. This journalist learned from a trusted CIA source that the killing of Doug Johnston was a bot's job and that the bullet was meant for Devereaux. This CIA authority had also claimed that there were still contracts out for Devereaux's death. These threats may have occurred because of Devereaux looking into the death of Charles C. Morgan.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it does kind of make me like a little scared, like making a video about this case, just because like of all the crazy stuff that's happened to people who have researched this case in the past. So just so you know, if you're out there, and you know, I'm not looking into this, I'm just reporting what I've heard so far. I'm not your enemy. I'm not trying to, you know, do anything to any of you guys, whoever killed Charles. I'm not looking for problems, I promise. Anyways, so after this, a writer from DC, a guy named Danny Castellero, I hope I'm saying Castellero, I think I'm saying that right. He asked Don Devereaux for information about the case. He was looking into it. He wanted to do his own story on the case, and just before they met up to exchange that information, Danny was found, guess what, dead. And this one is even scarier. He was found in his bathtub, stabbed 12 times in his wrist, as though he has sliced his wrist 12 times. Sorry for the graphic explanation, but he has sliced his wrist over 12 times, and they claimed that this was a suicide, although everybody around him said that there was no indication that he was suicidal or anything. You know, he didn't leave a note, nothing. And his brother, who was a doctor, said that Danny was afraid to even get a shot or get pricked in the finger to get his blood work done. So why would he have sliced his wrist like this? You know, if he's terrified of sharp objects, he's terrified of needles and all this stuff, it doesn't make sense that that's the way he would choose to kill himself. That sounds horrifying. So as justified, like, people think that this was because he was looking into this case and he was about to meet up with Don for that information. Anyway, that's pretty much all we have, unfortunately. I mean, I know, I wish I could give you guys like a better ending to this or some conclusions, but really that's it. There is no more information about the case, and a lot of the people that have looked into the case since then or really started asking questions have mysteriously vanished or died or something like that. So it's a weird one. It's creepy, and I encourage you guys to like look up some of the, you know, information about it on your own. It's a really interesting case, and I enjoy it a lot. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, this is just one big mystery that we do not have any good answers for, and I hope that I don't die because I made this video. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it, and let me know in the comments if you have any theories or questions or ideas of stuff that maybe I can make a video about in the future. I love hearing from you guys, and I'll be happy to do some research and make a new one about pretty much anything. Yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Have a great night. Make sure to like and subscribe. I will see you next week. Bye.